really delighted to have everybody on today. We've got a real diverse mix of companies coming in to join us. And the purpose of this call was, we are fully aware that, many businesses are going through significantly challenging times at the moment because of coronavirus. We also have Brexit coming through at the end of the year, and these are all going to impact how our businesses operate and adapt in a sort of new order, if you like. But one of the things we know is that innovation can be key to recovery. And we're therefore really keen to support our members who are interested in building on their sort of capabilities, if you like. Now, I was on a call this morning with Fiona Hislop, the Cabinet Secretary for the Economy, and we will be hearing from the Scottish Government today on the response to the Economic Advisory Committee's report in that. And there's a real focus there on the long-term recovery for business in Scotland, as well as in the immediate short term. But all the way through her conversation this morning is that focus on innovation and entrepreneurship and how we can harness that. But from talking to Siobhan and Heather at Interface and talking to many of my members over the last couple of years, while many businesses are, of course, investing in R&D, there are a significant number that aren't aware of how to engage necessarily with the university sector. And what we're hoping by bringing in Brian from Has Technology and Martin and Doug from Aerospace Unlimited, who have experience of doing this, is that they can share their insights and hopefully give the people on the call a sort of good idea of how it works, where you can start, and the benefits of that collaboration. One of the sort of shining stars of the Scottish economy is our university sector. We have a huge breadth of universities covering a large number of areas of expertise, from Aberdeen and Robert Gordon in the northeast in the oil and gas sector, to Heriot Watt in marine, to Caledonian in textiles. There's a huge diversity out there. And I think the other thing that really struck me was when I first started looking at this, we always thought, that really when we talk about collaboration with universities, it's going to be about widgets, it's going to be about manufacturing. But actually what's been really fascinating to me is how much is also done in the social sciences areas, around productivity, around your workforce engagement. So it can be really diverse, the areas that you can engage in. But I don't want to take up too much time because we're only got an hour this morning. So what I really wanted to do was pass over to Siobhan, who is going to give us an introduction to Interface and how it supports R&D, and then we'll pivot over to Brian, Martin and Doug, and we'll sort of hear directly from them about their experiences and their sort of advice to the group. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Tracy, and delighted to join you all this morning on this webinar. I think sparking change is probably critical to economic recovery, but for me, it's very much a collaboration. And so it's been great to work with the CBI team on this. I think over the past few months, the team at Interface have probably been astounded at the real interest in entrepreneurship, invention and innovation. And so many of the companies that we've been working with have been really diversifying and adapting to the coronavirus situation. It might be adaptation to deliver new products, processes, or services, or it might be something completely new. But I think what they all have in common is the fact that they are turning to the world-leading expertise, knowledge and talent within Scottish universities and colleges to try and accelerate those products to reach the marketplace. And over the past 15 years, and it's been 15 years since I founded Interface, we have worked with many, many companies the length and breadth of Scotland. And really our role is to be impartial, to be a free service that can really help companies hear and really help them unlock the expertise across many different disciplines. So we hear the needs of businesses and translate those into opportunities that academics and many different research teams can help move forward. As Tracy kind of outlined, Scottish universities and colleges have outstanding reputation for their world-leading research knowledge technologies. But sometimes if you're a company on the outside, it's incredibly difficult to both find that relevant expertise, but also to understand how you can actually reach it quite quickly. There are many, many different doors to universities' buildings. There are many different walls around university buildings. But I have to say, universities and colleges, even throughout the last few months, are very much open for businesses. And we'd be delighted to help any organisation or business to, I suppose, reach new partnerships through those unlocking the doors or unlocking new knowledge. I think over the past period, it has been so challenging for many, many businesses. But actually, green shoots we are definitely seeing emerging. The 3 months that just elapsed, we've facilitated over 130 research and development partnerships. That's collaborations that have got contracts in place. And I think our 4 missions, I suppose, are around inspiring businesses to think about the art of the possible through reaching out to businesses like webinars like we're doing this morning, to actually help them innovate, to really support the businesses and what is best for them through their innovation journey. To make sure that we can enable impact, be it short, medium, or long term. That can be about taking ideas to invoices, can be about safeguarding jobs, can be about generating sales profits. But also, we very much work with informing policymakers. What's working well, what can be improved. And part of the example of that, perhaps, is some of the work that we've done across all the Scottish universities to have agreed legal templates, standard legal templates that actually make the art of collaboration much clearer around contractual negotiation around intellectual property. But I can kind of, I suppose, explain for many minutes in terms of what we can do, but I think it's best to hear exactly from the businesses themselves. So we're delighted that on the webinar this morning, we are joined by 2 businesses that we've helped. And I think hopefully their stories will help you understand how we operate, but also not to be a stranger, that there's lots and lots of different ways that universities can actually help. So I'm going to hand back to Tracy, who can then introduce our speakers.
Fantastic. Thank you very much. So as has been said, we've got Brian Brown from Has Technology, and we've got Martin Hawley and Doug Meerhoff from Aerospace Unlimited. So Brian and Martin and Doug, I thought what would be good is just if you gave us just a sort of overview of your firms, what you do, and what sort of led you down this journey would be a great sort of starting point, so companies can get a bit of an understanding. So Brian, do you want to sort of kick off, sort of just give us a little bit of background to Has Technology?
Sure, yeah, absolutely. Thank you. I mean, the Has Technology Group, we've been around for the past 20 years or so. We're a software development organisation with a kind of heritage of working within the health and social care space. I suppose our kind of background and original kind of ideas was providing kind of workforce management tools and kind of time and attendance type information for, I suppose, supporting primarily the social care market, but now also moving into the combined health and social care market. I suppose the main ethos behind that is kind of driving efficiency and effectiveness within the public sector, and part of where we've now moved to, which is the solution which is inspired out of the concept of Interface through Edinburgh Napier University, our kind of partner, is moving more into the data analytics space and then starting to use data on a much more kind of effective basis. From a kind of reach perspective, we work across 120 local authorities across the UK, so we've got quite a wide range kind of breadth, but also now moving into business opportunities within the US, Australia and New Zealand markets as well, and kind of I suppose cross sectors in there. I suppose why we came to Interface in the first place is because, quite frankly, we had a problem, a wicked problem that was difficult to solve. We didn't really know where to start, to be honest. I think it's probably fair to say that We then found Interface, and from there it was a bit like what I often describe as a bit like Match.com for kind of businesses trying to find the opportunities. I think from sitting from the outside, I would often use it as a kind of known unknowns. We know there's fantastic research going on within universities, but again, given the breadth of Scotland, where would be the most appropriate place to kind of start with us? Since we've had that engagement, it really did open the door very easily for us, and we found absolutely, I suppose, wonderful, engaging, I would say, partners now. Not a relationship that's clearly strengthened over a number of years, and absolutely couldn't speak highly enough of the services that Interface have provided in order to facilitate that.
Fantastic. And it's interesting because what I was saying at the beginning is that you're a perfect example of, you're not an engineering company manufacturing components. You actually are developing software, digital solutions around efficiency. And I think a lot of people don't make that connection, that is an ideal university partnership.
Absolutely.
I'm going to pop over to Martin. I don't know who wants to lead on this one, but again, really useful if you could give us. There's maybe a little bit of a hint in the name, but a little bit of a background to your company and the sectors that you're involved in. Oh, Martin, I think you're on mute.
Yeah, Airspace Unlimited is about airspace. Doug's had a career in air traffic control. He's been a traffic controller. And I've worked in what we call air traffic management as a consultant for 20 odd years. And really to start the story off, because our sort of story or journey started with academia. I was kicking around this idea of could you optimize airspace better? And at the moment, military airspace is very fixed and aircraft have to fly around it. Except on times when they release it back. And we just spotted this opportunity to optimize on a daily basis the exact configuration of military airspace. So it's a very, very niche thing we're doing, but it has wider sort of application within the airspace world. And so I was kicking this idea around, and I took it by accident to the mathematics KTN in sort of about 5 years ago, and said, I've got this idea, but I don't know the maths to do it. And then we had about 25 PhD mathematicians work on this problem from all different angles. And it was just an amazing thing, actually. So if anyone keeps an eye on the mathematics KTN, they do this, and they're still doing these workshops with industry. I think they call them industry study groups. So then Doug and I, we've been doing some work together, and we got together. I think it might have been 2017. I was up for the Edinburgh Festival, and we had a chat about it, and Doug was quite interested. So we decided to sort of start together on this venture. That led to a DFT TTRIG grant, which really just gave us the whole mechanism to put everything together, to sort of implement what we'd learned from the mathematics KTN into a working model. And then we decided that Scotland was a better place to set up a business than any other part of the UK. So I'll just bring Doug in on that, because you can pick up on that story.
Yeah, thanks, Martin. As you can tell by my accent, or I don't come from Scotland, but we 5 years ago, and as Martin mentioned, we had a conversation about an idea he had, and I was, as an air traffic controller, I could see the operational concept and the operational potential, but the business part of it was a bit sort of new to me. So I started basically with Business Gateway, and through the process of introducing ourselves to them and starting to access some of the facilities they have available, the conversation led us. I'm sorry?
Sorry, you're breaking up a little bit, but you're back.
Okay. Through
Oh, I'm sorry, Doug. Your quality of your call, I don't know if it's just me.
with Sterling University supplied us with some.
Excellent. Sorry,
No,
Martin,
I'm
you
very
want to come back
unexpected
in?
just now.
Perfect. Thank you, Doug. Sorry that the signal's not very strong there. I suppose one of the things I think would just be really interesting is really how, you know, so you phone up Interface, you say to them, you know, we've got this idea, we don't know where to start. What sort of happened next? Like, you know, is it a interview panel? Do you go around a whole lot of universities? Do they come back with two? What exactly happened, Brian? What's the process?
I think it's we initiated that process and through the business engagement team with Interface, and effectively you get a lot of detail of explaining the problem. And that took a fair amount of time at the start, but I can understand why, again, with 2020 hindsight, looking back, you go through that kind of filtering exercise, and part of what that allowed the Interface team then to do was effectively to find the most appropriate resources that are available within the university sector. And part of that was clearly doing ourselves a favour in respect of refining down the number of universities that are institutions that we would then speak to. We were then presented with a kind of comprehensive report, which came back in, from memory, I think there was 3 or 4 institutions in there, and it gave a fair amount of detail around the individuals at each university as well. The responsibility and the onus was then on us to make contact. I have to say we spoke to probably 3 of the universities, and I suppose it then just goes into the business section of kind of feel and kind of around what your requirements are and the feedback that you're getting from the universities. I have to say, in our respect, certainly our partner was Edinburgh Napier University, and it's a kind of odd thing, but I probably knew within the first 10 minutes of the meeting that was probably going to be probably the best fit for us. In terms of the kind of professors that we spoke to, but also in relation to their direction of travel. They had just initiated PhD research into health informatics and frailty, which was very much akin to the area of where our data would then be kind of overlaid within. So that actually kind of happened very quickly beyond that, and then that's kind of supported and followed on with various kind of funding pots that Interface have supported with in terms of engaging through the Scottish Funding Council.
Thank you, Brian. And Martin, was it a similar experience for yourself? You know, was it pretty straightforward once you met some of the potential partners? Was it quite clear cut who the one that you're going to choose and develop the relationship with?
We had a really so very similar to Brian's story. We wrote a description of our problem, and that came back to us with a list of universities that were interested in working with us, and it was overwhelming, really. I think we had about 10 or 12 people come back, so we had this big pack of people, and we sort of narrowed it down to about 3 or 4 that we just thought were worth having conversations with, and yeah, and then it was we've got two of the founders are mathematicians, and they were a bit concerned about using genetic algorithms, so that ruled one university out. It doesn't mean we won't do that in future, but it was just it's part of our selection process, and yeah, and it was, and in the end, it was a tough decision, but I think we made the right one, because we went with the University of Stirling, and it was just the process in getting there. I mean, Doug actually did most of the work, so I'm just going to hand it back to him, Doug, if you want to make any comments before I go on that.
Sorry, Doug. We've still really got no signal.
Yeah, sorry.
Please go.
Yeah. Sorry, Doug. This isn't working. Heather, do you want to chat, Doug, and just let him know? Because I think there's quite a long delay as well in getting back to her.
Yeah, so I mean, it was a very easy process, mostly because Doug did this side, from my perspective. Doug was doing all the work, but and it was great talking to universities, and even that helped us sort of develop our view of what exactly we wanted. I mean, we had a sort of a seemingly sounding question, which is the model we had. How do we speed it up? How do we get a 10 times improvement in the speed of what we're doing?
It's funny, my background a long time ago was actually was one of the founding teams to develop algorithmic trading in equities at UBS. So yeah, there was a lot of chat around custom algorithms and everything there. But what we also got pushed very hard was, developing that spec. Brian talked about it. It's one of the hardest things. It's actually a lot more time gets spent, writing exactly what it is you're trying to achieve. I'm a sort of salesperson. I'm always wanting to run before we can walk. It's just like solve it, and there is nothing worth more than a really good project manager. I think that forces you to sit down and really put your proper spec. You can save a lot of money, thinking it through.
Stop solutionizing. Come up with a problem. Yeah.
So I think it's great that Interface is making you really sort of think about that
Very much.
before you get going. I suppose. Is this also an evolving relationship, like from where you started and how you thought you would be working with the universities over the months and years? Has it changed? Has it developed? Have you gone on to do new things or different things that you hadn't planned on? And have you stuck with the one university, or can you see, even if you are at the moment, do you think it's giving you the confidence now to sort of do the process again and maybe, find new partners? Or do you think once you've found one, you stick with one? Brian or Martin wants to answer that first. Brian.
I mean, our relationship, I say, is become very much more than a transactional relationship within the Blue Napier, which is very much a kind of firm partnership, which is fantastic. And I think that relationship and partnership has evolved over the years. We have now actually employed the PhD student who was working on the project, who now forms one of our data scientists as part of the team within ARMD, and that very much gives us that kind of mathematical background, as well as understanding how that stands up against what the academic rigour actually then tells us. And that again for us is a very important thing. As a software company, it's very important that we don't build things from the inside out, we build stuff from the outside in. So we're very much aware of what research tells us. Absolutely crucial that we have a kind of stand-up ability, if you like, of what the models are telling us against what the research actually does also tell us. I think what's fair to say is that the kind of wicked problem that we're trying to solve has been one that is actually a worldwide problem. We have an ageing demographic. I think what was clearly said to me recently is where we have people on the planet, we have an ageing population, and it's very much around how countries actually then resolve to support that kind of ageing process. The difficulty of what we see, even put COVID aside, even from a UK perspective, the health and social care market was under substantial pressure, even prior to COVID. Clearly that's now and will continue to have further ongoing pressure. So I think from that, what's now coming out is a lot more insightful research now beginning to arise, particularly in our particular field. I did have conversations just actually the end of last week with an Australian university who are now keen to extend that out and look at it from very much an Australian perspective through kind of specific contextualised changes that operate within their region. So I think what that's done is probably given us the confidence of extending out that relationship to perhaps looking at further partnerships even now beyond Edinburgh Napier.
I suppose that also hopefully has a fantastic business opportunity as well, because they'll have good contacts on the ground, local networks that you'll be able to exploit as well.
Yes. Very much so, very much so. And I think that's probably one of, just kind of touching on that point, is very much one of the important things that we found from even engaging with Napier. It's the additional kind of spider web of contacts that actually then start to open up to you. And we have had and benefit from a huge amount of those as a result of those projects.
Martin, one of the interesting sort of myths I think you always get is that academia aren't commercial, and that they just want to research. And there's this sort of concern that if a business tries to engage with the universities, that actually, where do you draw the line going, well, this is good enough now, we can commercialize this, and the research department wants to keep researching, or, is that just a complete myth? How did it work as opposed a business, I suppose, which has got a commercial hat on, you're not a not-for-profit, you're there to grow, working with an academic institution that might have different priorities?
I have an academic background, so I sort of get the business and the academic world. I think one of the issues, and it's probably, researchers like to solve problems. So I think everyone is interested in the first point. I think for businesses, and I'm sure this is what Brian is doing, you always need to be looking at what's coming next and where the next level is, because your competitors are going to be doing that. And I think if you're not, and you're sat sort of fat, dumb and happy as a franchise doing the same old thing, at some point you're going to get disrupted in this digital world. So I think there's an imperative for businesses to reach out to universities. And I also think there's an imperative for universities to reach into businesses and just strike up conversations about what they're trying to do, and maybe think about whether there's any sort of element of research, of their research, that they could bring to it. So it's kind of how do you get everyone to meet in the middle and chat about it. My experience of that has been really good. But I say I have a bit of an academic background, so maybe somehow I speak the language in a little bit of a way. It is true. Universities are after their fundraising all the time as well, and they're not getting enough funds from their students, so they're having to, they're getting foreign students in, and we're in a very different situation now. What I'd say about our position as a startup is, after that first innovation grant, innovation voucher, we started to give back to Sterling, so that really directly helped us and opened up some ideas for us. And we were then looking at other projects that were coming up in the air traffic management area, and we were able to work with some other companies and bring Sterling into those projects. So I think in a way I'd say for universities, the thing is you've got to put a bit of time into finding out businesses, because it will open new doors for you for your business development as well. So I think only good things can come out of that relationship.
Fantastic. Thank you, Maren. Heather, I was just going to pop to you. Is there anybody wanting to make any comments or chats that we could bring in?
I have one question that's come through so far. What would stimulate thousands of SMEs who do not undertake R&D to contact Interface? And that's been directed to Martin and Brian.
Big question.
That's a big question.
Siobhan, yeah. You might have an idea to that. Well, we go to you first, Siobhan, and then Brian and Martin will come to you. You can have a wee think about it. Put you on the spot, Siobhan.
That's fine. I was very curious and smiling at the question, because it's probably one that we in Interface team spend many hours trying to come up with solutions. I think if we look at how businesses find out about us currently, I think it is a whole mix of different advocacy channels. So, we work not just with meeting companies on a regional base, because the team is spread the length and breadth of Scotland, but we're also engaging with, Martin mentioned Business Gateway. We work across the enterprise agencies, Scottish Enterprise, Highland Lands Enterprise, and you said the Scotland Enterprise, and we're also, I suppose, influencing professional services and business-led organisations. So it's that, I suppose, trying to, have a ripple effect where we're demonstrating real impacts for businesses that help inspire. But yes, if I had a magic wand and a kind of catalytic answer, it would be that we have thousands of businesses that are really engaged and probably a fluidity around their relationships with universities. That it's more free flowing. I think I was asked a number of years ago, when will the need for interface disappear? And I kind of set out the vision that actually businesses, academics kind of move seamlessly across one another's organizations, really understand one another. I think we're a far journey away from that still, but that certainly would be a catalytic effect if we could get thousands of SMEs
And do you think has it changed in the last 15 years? Like, I've been quite immersed in this world for quite a long time, so I hear a lot of people talking about it. But as you say, we've got 365,000 companies in Scotland now. I think we're probably all aware, certainly, 350,000 probably aren't relevant for this, but let's say there was 15,000 or 20,000, still a huge pool. But do you see the direction of travel in the right way? Are people becoming much more aware generally? Because obviously innovation, R&D are things that governments have been talking about for a long time now.
So I think there's a number of different things that have happened over the last 15 years. I think first of all, I think universities probably at the point when we started Interface were very focused on spinning out technologies and perhaps licensing technologies to large industrial players, pharmaceutical companies, etc. And certainly their interest in both solving wicked problems and really being focused on knowledge exchange and exchanging their knowledge has certainly been significantly enhanced over the last 15 years. I think there's also a huge desire to support the students and the graduates from universities and colleges with real live experience. What is it to work with an employer to do an industry-led challenge during your coursework? And that's really helping the skills of tomorrow in real life examples. So for many of the different undergraduate or postgraduate degrees now have a key component of that is working with industry or with other organizations. And many of the graduate schools are really helping support that. So I think they're just two of the kind of many changes I think that have really helped the universities be a lot more open and engaged with businesses. On the business side, I think time to market is of the essence. Your competitors will steal a march on you if you don't get ahead. And therefore, some of the companies that I've worked with perhaps have struggled internally for 3 years with a problem that could actually be accelerated and solved very, very quickly by tapping into external expertise. So I think it's that time to market is really critical from a company's point of view. So finding those solutions and proving early stage concepts or really accessing facilities has accelerated that, I suppose, porosity of the universities to work with them.
But I think that's something we probably need to promote even more, because some people might be concerned that, oh, well, if I go to an external partner, I've got to get them up to speed in my business, and that actually could slow things down. So actually, it's really interesting. It can make them more efficient.
Yeah.
But Brian, Martin, if you had a magic wand for Siobhan, what would it be, you think, to raise that awareness that this opportunity is out there?
I think case studies are probably the most important in demonstrating the benefits of what other businesses that have been through that process and what is achievable as a result of that. I think there's probably many reasons as to why you wouldn't do it, as in you could always put your head, don't mean put your head in the sand, but there's always probably many other things that are distracting priorities within the day job that would force that. But I think by doing that, you are allowing competitors to kind of steal a march on you. I know absolutely for sure that we wouldn't be where we are without the academic support that we have had. And would we have found that on our own? Possibly, but again, we probably would have invested a lot more time and wasted energy actually then trying to establish what that actually was in the first place.
And Martin, your thoughts how we can get more SMEs involved?
So just some ideas. I think from an SME point of view, it's whether the owners are working in the business or on the business, and there's a are they getting out and thinking about where next for the business and what that might mean. So I think there's a question for them. Businesses go out and network a lot, and there's loads of things set up. A bit different nowadays, but there's still that will come back. There's loads of networking, and just thinking about that, I haven't gone to many networking events where there were researchers mingling around. There are some, particularly in cybersecurity, but there's in a lot of areas there aren't people. So I guess I could picture a lot of researchers, PhD students and academics are just so focused on their research, and then that research leads to another piece of research, and they're not doing a wider sort of fishing exercise as to what might be coming in next. So I think something around bringing people together more would be very interesting. Sort of almost like a speed dating or that kind of where people are grouped together. What Siobhan was saying, I'd also picked up. For me, it's been very. I've always got a project in my back pocket that would fit an MSc thesis, and I don't always have the universities that I can connect with. In fact, years ago, I started a relationship with the University of Žilina in Slovakia, which is a very transport-oriented university, and we fed MSc topics, PhD topics, things like that, and that's kept us ahead of the curve. And it would be great if there was more of a kind of an outreach from universities to do that as well. So give us a topic, what's a real world thing? Maybe it's from MSc. And for me, it's a complete win-win. We get some insights and thoughts, and they get a real world problem. So I think there's quite a few things that we all could be doing. I think what's going on now is very good, but there's still improvements that can be made with that, and we're just limited by imagination at the moment.
Excellent. I am aware that we've got, I have David Brown of Edinburgh University from the Director of Strategic Partnership, and we've also got Tom Foote for the University of Strathclyde, who's on strategic theme support. I don't know, David or Tom, if you wanted to come in, just from a university point of view, how are you encouraging your sort of researchers, or are you doing things with your researchers like Martin suggesting, getting them out there, getting them to engage with business, or what you think could be done in this area? David, are you there? Nothing to put you on the spot. Hi, David. I can see you. Hi. I think I can hear you, David. Are you there? No. Or Tom?
Okay. I've opened both microphones, so hopefully Tom or David.
I can see you now, David, but I can't hear you. Or Tom?
There is a question that's come in actually from Tom Foote that I could put to you.
Okay.
He'd be interested to hear Brian and Martin's thoughts on how they've engaged with universities, having worked within academic institutions. It's become very apparent that there is a need to engage with businesses and networks of organisations, but there are many different ways to engage. And do the panel feel that it's easier to pose a problem and have the academic sector respond, or did they consider looking kind of at the university websites or social media first to inform them of who to direct travel to?
Martin, do you want to come on that?
Yeah. Interesting. I tend to find people through LinkedIn if I'm not going through like the formal channel you've been through with Interface, and look at who's working in the area that I think are of interest. So, but I also do use the university websites and sort of try and navigate through those. I think really, if universities, I suppose what universities would almost need to do is just say on their website that they welcome sort of just random ad hoc questions from businesses, and to maybe into a particular department, and then see if that can start a conversation. So I don't see anything wrong particularly. My social media as a business is more LinkedIn and Twitter, so I'm not going to be following universities and occasionally picking up a a tweet. It's more going to be direct. But I think social media is important, and also websites. But it's really what you put on there. How do you sort of fish for ideas and conversations, and then capture them?
And Brian?
Excuse me, a bit of the same actually. There's so much digital content out there now. I find you can try and swim through that. For us, it was much easier actually having that engagement and interface, having that expertise and knowledge to facilitate that. I appreciate from that basis though, it's us that's engaging in that and initiating that process. But there is an absolute ton of content out there for anyone who is also interested in finding it. So.
Thank you. Now, David, we're going to try again.
Given my background, it's embarrassing I couldn't get the technology to work there. Never mind, we'll leave that aside. And Siobhan, hi.
We've got your lovely dulcet tones now. So.
Yeah, you're getting quite sick of those now, actually, I think. Right. And to answer this very quickly, given the time, I think having Siobhan as a conduit is a fantastic thing. But what we're doing as a university, and over the last year, you'll see the results soon, is we're completely transforming the way that we're doing innovation. Because many of the comments resonate. How do you get into university? How do you get to the right person? How do you know what you do? And the key thing is, if you look at us, how do we actually demonstrate to the world that we are a world top 20 institution? Because there's so many things we can do, but we don't do everything. But crucially, how do we demonstrate to the world what we do brilliantly? And we have really worked on our research agenda and innovation, and we've now focused on 5 areas where we will be presenting pretty soon in a very open way what we will focus on. And people can come to us, and you can be certain that either through us or in partnership with Glasgow, Strathclyde, Heriot-Watt, whatever, you'll get access to the best of Scottish research and innovation, and crucially innovation that's very practically focused. An example of that, which might be interesting to some of your people there today, is, for example, the work we've just done with L&G, the 20 million on the Advanced Care Research Centre, which is right at the heart of the social care debate. So what we will become is much clearer about who are the people doing that, where are the areas that you can focus, and then how you get in to the university to do that. And we'll refresh the website and everything to make that clear, because it's not been structured in a way that does make it easy for people. And I know a number of the other institutions are doing the same thing. But the final message out of this is you will see a far greater collaboration between the universities. It was coming anyway, but COVID and perhaps what we see from the Cabinet Secretary's response today demonstrates that we need to give a much clearer focus between institutions on how we do innovation. Very happy to take detailed questions, not summarising about 3 days' work into about 4 minutes.
No, thank you for that. I suppose that is one of the concerns government has, is with us potentially going into a sustained economic crisis, if you like. For many businesses, they're still in survival mode. We know the next 6 to 12 months could be incredibly challenging. Unfortunately, we're hearing every other day now redundancies happening, particular sectors. Martin, of the aerospace is one right at the forefront that's under a very challenging environment. So there is a concern that companies might put the brakes on their R&D. Where actually what we're wanting, of course, is the opposite. There's also been a lot of conversations with the banks and the Chancellor around, obviously, there's been a lot of loans put out there, and of course a lot of people are having to use that money for survival, but they are trying to say, look, if you've got any opportunity to take some of that money and invest it, would be good for the long term. So I suppose that's a very long-winded way of saying, Brian, Martin, what is your sense? Do you think that people will find a way that that this is just the way now, that R&D investment is a crucial part of business, or will it be, as we saw after the financial crisis, a slowdown, and that that we will see a stalling, do you think, in investment in R&D and in innovation? What would your sort of gut feel be, Brian?
I would hope not, is the answer. But again, that goes back, I think, to the individual business and the pressures that they are facing. Certainly from a personal perspective of HAS technology, actually what this is now doing is actually extending out our innovation. Rather than pulling back, we're actually now extending out and recruiting further development resource into our team to actually push on from where we are. Now, part of that is simply because as an organisation, we are highly innovative, and what we are playing on that is if our competitors are taking the reverse approach, that will put us in a far better place to do so. So I would certainly, I mean, it would be great to see all organisations and universities collaborating on a much more effective kind of basis. I think that absolutely that innovation will be there. It's going to come down to the individual organisations, I would say, but certainly from our point of view, we're kind of kicking on, so to speak, which for me is the right thing to do.
I think it's also interesting. One of the things we've seen, of course, companies have been planning for Brexit for the last 3 years as well. You know, some are very positive about it, some are very concerned about it. But it's meant that companies have been taking a very hard look, I think, at their processes, at their productivity, and going exactly how can we make sure we're in the best situation possible, whatever way it works out, whether it's a great opportunity or it's a very challenging opportunity. We want to be as efficient as we possibly can be. And I think COVID's just brought that into an even sharper focus. I know one of the announcements the Cabinet Secretary is hoping to make today is around particular support for SMEs and digital funding, you know, to try and leverage off, you know, the sort of good experience that a lot of companies have had over the last 6 months. You know, I can't tell you how many of my companies said, you know, they put off putting in sort of online payments or digital payments for 2 years and then managed to get them up and running in 3 days, and saying, why did we make such a big deal about this? And that's a very small thing. I know, I appreciate you guys are in a slightly more sophisticated part of the world, but I think our sort of message would be this is not the time to slow down. You have to step up, because also markets, as you say, are increasingly global, and your competitors are no longer just 50 miles away or 100 miles away. They can come from 10,000 miles. But Martin, you're in a particularly interesting sector. We actually, again, I had a lot of discussions about this in the last couple of days. You know, I've got members who are manufacturers in aerospace. I've got airports. I've got airlines. This is a global catastrophe, really, for the industry. Certainly in the short term, there's a lot of talk about needing, sector-specific support for the industry. But, you know, on this other side, aerospace is sort of a flagship for the Scottish economy. It's something we do incredibly well. You know, do you think this is going to be as a challenging time as we think, or is the industry robust enough up here that they will continue to invest and grow?
That's a very interesting question. And Rolls-Royce, they've been cutting their staff. They've withdrawn from the EFAN engine demonstrator. I don't think that's sort of nails in the coffin. I think that's more tactical than strategic. Sector-specific support is interesting because we've gone around in circles. So we have an aviation, and the capability of our work is across Europe would be to reduce the carbon footprint of aviation by 2 million tons of carbon dioxide a year. And it's an operational improvement. It's data analytics. It's how you do the operations. It's been, apart from our initial success, we've been trying to see, can we get funding from the sort of static things we're doing to more doing this as a service in a dynamic way. And we haven't had any interest, I would say, particularly from the aviation industry in the UK. And it's very siloed. The sector support is very siloed. So it's about engines or airframes or materials. It's not about operations. So we spoke to we contacted the ATI, the Future Flight, not interested. It's all about drones. So I think there's a risk actually in being too sector focused, because you say we want to solve this problem, and we're not really interested in any other problem that helps us. So I think there's a conundrum there, and I think just being a little bit open-minded by the way some of these programs are run and constructed would be very helpful. The possibly the saving grace for us is that a lot of the recovery, the loans to airlines, I'm not necessarily saying the UK, but in other parts, there's a strong link with the European Green Deal, with what everyone's trying to do in Europe, to link the recovery to green ideas. So, and that's where we fit in. So I think where airlines, where air traffic control organisations are wanting to show their green credentials, we're ready to help them with those. But I think, generally the aviation industry, people are talking recovery by 23, 24, but that's just flights. And what you have to think about as well is the operations. There'll be people who will have really knocked down their reserves, they'll have taken loans out to survive. And then there are knock-on industries as well. So there's in air traffic control, it supports the airlines. There's an agreement in Europe that all of the flights are going on at the moment. The revenue from those flights won't go to the traffic control organisations until November, possibly December this year. So they're running on empty on all of this, and they will cut investment. And we've seen it before in every other recession. So, and the European Commission is putting money into their traffic control in terms of new technology and R&D. But even companies might be saying, well, we can't even afford the co-funding part of this. So I think there's a really difficult problem at the moment, and I don't have any great solutions. And I'll just echo Brian's really. I hope it doesn't impact in R&D, but I think it will, particularly in the larger companies where they're trying to keep the operation going, and anything that's superfluous to the immediate operation won't get funded.
It's interesting, about saying keeping it open, because one of the things we're actually facilitating at the moment is, as you say, the green recovery has got a lot of focus, and Scotland is very strong in energy, and we work very closely with the big energy companies from Scottish Power, EDF, etc. And they've got a fantastic strong pipeline in front of them. And there's some interesting challenges they've got. I only found out recently, like every single blade in the North Sea needs to be replaced in the next 3 years. There needs to be, innovation there. And actually, we started speaking to one of our aerospace companies, and they've actually developed some great technology to stop sort of wear and tear, if you like, on the blades of aeroplanes. And could we use some of that technology? And one of the things we're talking about trying to bring some of like the automotive sector or the aerospace sector, who have obviously seen their own market stall a little bit at the moment, going, rather than thinking of yourself as just an aerospace company or just an automotive company, think of yourself as an engineering company. And could you pivot into these sectors that actually have got a fantastic pipeline in them? And traditionally in the UK, a lot of our focus on sort of, if we just look at offshore wind, was more on what we would call the steel bashing. And actually what we really need is manufacturers in the much more sophisticated parts of, for example, the wind turbines. And I think that's one of the things we, is just trying to see, how can we get that supply chain that is maybe very much focused on one sector go, you've got some great skills, you've got great equipment, there is definitely money coming from the Chancellor to, support that innovation. And I'm wondering, Siobhan, do you think that's something that, Interface would be actually probably quite well positioned to be able to work with companies to give them that insights of going, yes, you've not done that before, but with university partners, we could help you get there? And is that something you're thinking about?
Absolutely. I think the pace of what we've seen over the last 3 months with respect to supporting the health response would be great to see that pace continued, with respect to supporting innovation, and particularly, on key areas where we know that Scotland can make an impact. Green recovery, health and social care, etc. And I think the two companies that we've highlighted today are kind of showing where actually, the mindset around innovating is so important. Many of the businesses that we work with are around, ideas about diversifying what they perhaps have already looking at and supplying one market, how they can approach other markets. And I think don't underestimate the connections that universities can help in actually, expanding out into new markets as well, because they may have already worked in companies in those new areas. So it's a key area of development for us, and delighted to kind of support in any way we can companies that are considering changing or pivoting.
I think it's one of the things that always surprised me about Scotland being such a small country, but actually how many people don't know each other. People that I would assume paths would cross. So, see, the classic one was when I bought, a large aerospace company and introduced them to Scottish Power, and I just thought, well, they're both in Glasgow, they definitely will have spoken to each other. They never met each other, and because both sectors had been so successful, they never really had a need to, collaborate or cross. And there is just so much technology, I think, that can be transferred. We see a lot of it in the food and drink, even within the food and drink sector. They don't realise that what's been happening in the automation of wrapping chocolates could be used in a different part. I'm very conscious that we've got 3 minutes left. I was just going to go back to Brian and Martin, say if there's anything you would like to say that you haven't had a chance to say yet, and any one piece of advice that you'd give Scottish companies, and then I thought I'd go back to Siobhan and Heather to sum up. But Brian, any last pieces of wisdom you'd like to share?
I always use a phrase of the known unknowns. We knew that there was stuff going on out there in terms of research, but we didn't know how to access it. My advice would be Interface opened that door to us and would absolutely beat the drum for the organisations to make use of that.
And Martin?
Yes, the Interface name says it on the tin, really. I think it's, and yeah, I'd have lots more of it. Reaching out, sort of bridging that gap between universities and business. David said something which just triggered as well. I think the best thing that universities could be doing right now is finding their students any opportunity to have some experience with an employer. And when I did my degree, I did a thick sandwich course. I did a year in industry. And with what I've learned through my children now is that universities don't really help in the same way that they used to. Maybe it's the numbers of students, but they seem to say to students, oh, go and look on a website and find the companies. And I think that's quite indicative of something missing, really, of university departments not really having connections with business. And I think I'd say the CBI and Interface could probably do a lot in that area and bring people together, and that would provoke R&D discussions as well.
Yeah, as I said, I think sometimes we're a bit complacent that we think these relationships are happening organically, and the reality is just a little bit of facilitation can go a very long way, and it's certainly something that Siobhan and I want to talk more about, is how can we get these opportunities. And I think, I can't remember, Brian, if it was you, Martin, talking about case studies. I think they are just so great for just getting people's sort of thoughts going and going, oh, actually, well, that's really interesting. It's a different sector, but actually that could apply to us, and it just sort of plants some seeds. So I think that's something that's quite simple we could do more, is get those examples out to certainly our community of members of what's possible there. But look, really appreciative of you taking the time out of your schedules to share your thoughts about it. I found it really fascinating. So I really do appreciate. Doug, I'm so sorry that we had technology problems and we couldn't really hear from you. David's also come back just saying that he's not seeing a slowdown at all, which is fantastic. And that gives me some hope there as well. But Siobhan, Heather, do you want to just, we're 11 o'clock on the dot, but I don't know if you'd like to just finish up for us before I close us down.
I'm going to briefly say one thing, which is a call to action, that no mission is impossible through Interface. And I think Brian said strike up conversations. So that's what we really want to do, is strike up conversations. But the final word to Heather, I think, in closing.
Yes, I'll just close today's session. We've had some really nice comments through the chat box, just saying what a good discussion it's been and how interesting. And I think especially to hear it from that business perspective and how useful not just Interface, but also those academic contacts have been. So really nice to receive those comments. So thank you everyone for joining us, and we hope that you have found the session enjoyable, and there's been some good takeaways from that. I guess just to reiterate from the conversations that we've had, is that universities are open for business and open to businesses to support the recovery and build from the impacts of COVID, but also beyond that as well. And both Interface and CBI are here to help make those connections. So I guess if any of the content today has inspired you to make contact with any of the speakers, then please do get in touch. But thank you again. Thank you for Tracy for hosting today's session, and to Martin, Brian, Doug and Siobhan, and also to, I guess, David Brown for being called on unexpectedly. So thank you very much for that.
Sure.
Thank you very
Thank you,
much.
everyone.
Okay, thanks. Okay, thanks. Bye-bye. Bye-bye.